It's just another typical PTA meeting, the kind where the parents gather to discuss what's going on in the school. The chairs are lined up neatly in rows, and the atmosphere is calm. A few parents chat softly among themselves, catching up on the latest school events. The principal stands at the front, flipping through a stack of papers. Everything seems normal. That's when he walks in. A man, dressed simply but with a quiet confidence. He's the only one who enters alone. His presence isn't loud, but it's noticeable. He glances around the room briefly, and finds a seat in the back, keeping to himself. The conversation continues, but a few heads turn to look at him. There's a brief pause as some parents notice him. The man remains still, sitting down without making a fuss. His body language says that he's not bothered by the attention, but it's clear that the room is. The silence is almost uncomfortable for a moment, but the meeting continues, and people slowly return to their conversations. No one speaks to him directly, and he doesn't seem to mind. He's here for a reason, and he's not going anywhere. As the meeting goes on, the conversation turns to funding. The principal discusses some new plans for after-school programs and activities. But quickly, the discussion shifts toward the topic of involvement. Some parents start to grumble about how the school needs more financial support, more hands-on help from the families. One parent, sitting near the front, raises their voice. "It's just like always," they say. Some parents, they come to these meetings once in a while, but you never see them pitch in. The comment hangs in the air for a moment. Some nod in agreement, others laugh awkwardly. The man, sitting quietly at the back, doesn't react. He watches the exchange but says nothing. A few more comments are made, and it's clear they're talking about the lack of involvement from some families. Another parent chuckles, adding, "Maybe if they cared more about the school, we'd see them more often." The man's presence is still noticeable. Even though no one speaks directly to him, people continue to talk, but their eyes wander toward him. Their voices soften a little when they realize that he's there, but they don't stop. It's like they're testing the waters, seeing how far they can go with their jokes and comments before anyone calls them out. One more remark comes out, louder than the others, but it's clear it's not just a casual statement. It's a mockery. A father who's clearly out of place, out of his element, at least in their minds. The man's eyes narrow just slightly, but he doesn't respond. The room falls into a brief silence, but then the conversation picks back up. More complaints, more jokes. The subtle mockery continues, and the father remains calm. He's sitting there, quietly observing, but something is different now. There's a shift in the air. The principal speaks up, trying to steer the discussion back on track, but it's clear the tension is growing. The father stands up slowly, and the room falls into an unexpected hush. All eyes turn toward him. For a moment, no one says anything. Even the parents who are laughing now seem uncertain. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't shout or demand attention. He simply stands, waiting for them to notice. When he speaks, his voice is steady and calm, but there's something in his tone that commands respect. "I'm not sure what you all think you know about me," he says. The words are measured, direct. "But I think it's time you all knew who I really am." There's a pause as the room processes his words. The parents who were talking just moments ago now sit up straighter, unsure of what's happening. The father doesn't give them time to react. He continues, "I didn't come here to sit at the back and be quiet. I came here because my child is in this school, and like any parent, I care about their future. But what I don't tolerate is people making assumptions about me, or anyone else." His eyes scan the room, catching a few nervous glances. The tension grows, but the man doesn't let it break his focus. Some parents start to shift in their seats, the jokes from earlier, now feeling uncomfortable. The man doesn't seem angry, just matter of fact. He's not here for their judgment, he's here to correct their misperceptions. His next words come with weight. "You think I don't belong here, but maybe you don't know who I really am." He stands tall, his posture unwavering. The room is silent now. The mockery that had once filled the air has been replaced by an uneasy stillness. All eyes are on the man, and no one dares to speak. He stands tall, his presence commanding attention. His words are measured but firm, and he continues without hesitation. "You don't know me, but I've done more for this community than you might think." The man's voice doesn't shake, but there's a quiet strength in it. He's not angry, he's simply stating the facts. He takes a deep breath and begins to explain. I'm an entrepreneur. I've built businesses from the ground up. And no, they didn't come easy. I worked long hours, made sacrifices, and fought for every opportunity that came my way. But that's not why I'm here. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle in. I've worked on national initiatives to improve education for kids who, like my own, don't always get the same opportunities as others. His eyes sweep across the room, catching a few stunned expressions. Some parents exchange glances, beginning to understand that there's more to him than they assumed. He continues. I've partnered with some of the biggest names in education, politicians, activists, business leaders, people who've dedicated their lives to making real change. I've spent years helping build better programs, better schools, and better futures for children who need it the most. His voice softens slightly, but there's still conviction behind every word. He lets that sink in for a moment before adding, but none of that matters as much as what's happening right here, right now. What matters is that I'm a father, and I'm here for my child, and I will not let anyone make me feel less than that. The room is still, but now it's different. The parents who had been laughing earlier now look uncomfortable, their faces flushed with realization. The father doesn't stop there. You think I don't belong at this table. But it's not about what I look like or where I come from, it's about what I've done, and what I'm still doing. A few parents start to shift in their seats, realizing the magnitude of the man standing before them. Some are looking down, their expressions hard to read. Others are finally beginning to see the father in a new light. The atmosphere has completely changed. He's not just some outsider who doesn't belong. He's someone who's worked tirelessly for a cause he believes in. He's someone who's proven his worth time and time again, and now, the room knows it. The room is heavy with silence now, but it's not an uncomfortable silence anymore. There's a sense of awareness in the air. The parents who had once made jokes are starting to look at the man differently, some even with shame in their eyes. The mocking has stopped, but so has the casual conversation. The mood in the room has shifted entirely. The father doesn't let the silence linger for too long. He speaks again, but this time his words carry a different weight. You think that because I walk into a meeting like this alone, because I don't fit your idea of what a parent looks like, that I'm not committed. But I'm just like you. I'm doing the best I can to make sure my kid has the best future possible. Just like every one of you. He pauses, letting that sink in. Some parents are beginning to look at their laps, their fingers nervously tapping on their papers. They know what he's saying is true. There's more to a person than what you see on the outside, he continues, his voice steady but firm. And there's more to being involved than just showing up to a meeting. It's about making an impact. It's about standing up for what's right. It's about doing the work when no one's watching. A few parents glance at each other, their faces shifting from embarrassment to genuine reflection. The man doesn't raise his voice or act like they owe him anything. He's simply sharing the truth, his truth. And it's making them see things in a new light. The father looks around the room. There's no anger in his expression, just a quiet confidence. You might not know me, but that doesn't mean I'm not here for the right reasons. He looks directly at the principal and then at the other parents who had been making those jokes earlier. I'll do whatever it takes for my child to succeed, but that means I need you to stop assuming that just because I don't fit your idea of normal, I'm not doing my part. One by one, parents start to shift in their seats, as if they're trying to process everything he said. Some of them look at him with newfound respect. Others, still, seem to shrink with embarrassment. The father doesn't care if they apologize. He's not here for that. He's here to show them that they've been wrong about him. And in doing so, he's made them question their own assumptions. At this point, even the parent who had been making the loudest jokes earlier sits back in their chair, their face flushed. The father, with his calm demeanor and steady words, has made an impact. He's changed the room. There's a shift in how people are looking at each other now. The mocking is gone, replaced by uncomfortable realization. They had misjudged him, and they know it. There's no going back to the way things were. The man stands tall, his quiet pride now visible in his posture. He doesn't need their approval, but he's earned their respect. As the meeting continues, the dynamics in the room have completely changed. The man's words still echo in the air, and the once dismissive parents are now paying attention in a way they never were before. The air is thick with reflection, but also with a new sense of respect. The father's impact is undeniable. The principal tries to steer the meeting back to its original agenda, but the tone has shifted. The focus is no longer on the usual school business. Now, everyone is more engaged. The parents are listening, not just to the agenda, but to each other. They're more thoughtful in their responses, more considerate of their words. Some glance back at the father, who remains quiet, observing. His presence is no longer something to ignore. It's something to respect. A few parents who had been talking about the lack of involvement begin to change the subject, their voices softer and more deliberate now. They begin discussing how they can all help out more, how they can support the school and the students who need it most. They talk about new ways to contribute, to be more involved, not just in name, but in action. Later, a few parents approach the father. They don't try to explain away their previous behavior. Instead, they apologize. "I didn't know who you were," one of them says, lowering their gaze. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have judged you." Another nods in agreement. "I'll do better from now on, we'll do better." The father doesn't respond with anger, he simply nods. "It's not about the apology," he says. "It's about what happens next." Words are easy. It's the actions that count. A third parent, one who had been sitting near the front earlier, steps forward. "Is there anything we can do to help with the work you've been doing in the community?" they ask, their voice sincere. "I had no idea you were involved in all that. How can we get involved too?" The father smiles for the first time during the meeting. There's always room for more. Everyone has something to offer. He gives them the name of a local youth program he's been working with. He talks about ways the school can connect with community organizations that could use help. It's clear he's not just here to talk about change, he's here to make it happen. As the meeting wraps up, the mood is vastly different from when it started. The tension has dissolved, replaced by a sense of unity. The parents now see each other differently too. They've all learned something important. And as for the father, he leaves the room knowing he's made a real impact, not just on the people who mocked him, but on the whole community. He walks out with his head held high, his steps steady, but there's no need for applause. He doesn't need any recognition or validation from the people who had once ridiculed him. The impact has already been made. The change has already begun. The shift in the room is unmistakable, and that's all that matters to him. He doesn't need to hear the words of apology or see anyone's face twist in regret. What matters is that the message has been received loud and clear. As he steps out, he knows the parents who had dismissed him earlier now see him differently. They no longer see him as an outsider or someone who doesn't belong. The barriers they once built with their assumptions are starting to crumble. The walls of judgment they erected around him have been torn down, not with anger or confrontation, but with a simple statement of who he truly is. Inside that room, the parents have learned something crucial. They've learned that assumptions, those quiet, invisible judgments that are often made without a second thought, can be incredibly dangerous. In a single moment, they've realized how quickly they can misjudge a person, how easily they can make someone feel small without even realizing it. And that understanding has left a mark on them. It's not something they'll easily forget. They've also learned that a person's worth is never defined by their appearance, their background, or the things others assume about them. Worth isn't something that can be seen from the outside, and it's not determined by the color of someone's skin or their position in life. It's shaped by what a person does, by their actions, by their character. And the father has shown them that. But perhaps the most important lesson they've learned is that respect isn't something that should be given lightly or taken for granted. It's something that has to be earned, and not through superficial gestures, but through real, tangible actions. Respect isn't about who speaks the loudest or who can make the funniest joke. It's about demonstrating your value through what you do, through how you contribute to the world around you. And this father, despite all the mockery, has shown them exactly what true respect looks like. As the father leaves, there's a quiet weight in the air. A weight of understanding, of reflection. The parents in the room may not have known what they were missing before, but now they do. And the shift that has happened in that room will follow them. It will shape how they see others from now on. They'll remember this moment the next time they make assumptions about someone. And they'll carry with them the knowledge that the true measure of a person is not what meets the eye,